I could let Jeopardy go by on the final Jeopardy
days of Christmas. And it is very well worthwhile walking around. You can pick up the map at the Wish House, and there are 12 different great windows with Christmas scenes. The one at Vane was done by Caroline Kosciuszko, but each one has a different artist that's done it, and they're all very attractive, well worth looking at.
The map is also on the Cornwall website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Richard's been around with his video camera, so I really love the concept of the three French hens doing the can-can. That is so clever. That is so clever. Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, so it's 7:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. First thing is approval of the minutes, December 1st, regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. It's a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes from Tuesday, December 1st.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, hi Marina.
Hi.
So any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Okay, so that takes care of the minutes. Public comments? Public comments?
I would like to make some.
Yes. Joanne?
Thank you. I agree. The West Cornwall windows are fabulous. What a nice treat. I know the policy here is not to answer questions that are raised during public comments, but I hope that the other selectmen will bring these issues up and discuss it so maybe we can hear an answer. At the last P&Z meeting, they voted to withdraw the proposed changes to business activities permitted in certain parts of town. One can only presume this was done in response to former P&Z Chairman David Colbert's scathing letter outlining the negative implications of the proposed regs. I wrote, the P&Z will now be revising the regs in work sessions where public input is prohibited. That's a truly sad state of affairs. I would urge the Board of Selectmen to speak with P&Z and get them to open these meetings to public comment. It's outrageous that this major rework of zoning rules is being done without public input to the revisions. So then P&Z moved to accept the proposed changes to the affordable housing regs. When Paul Gottesgen expressed concern about whether the proposed regs had been vetted by a lawyer, his query was dismissed by Chairman Timmel out of hand. Considering the troubling issues presented by the business district regs, this seemed rather foolish. Even if P&Z does not want to use their budget monies to hire a lawyer, I would suggest that the Board of Selectmen use some of the $10,000 they got from the COG to address affordable housing issues to hire a lawyer to review the proposed regs. So whatever is done to help achieve diversity in Cornwall's housing stock, we should not be spending that money on lawyers. So I would suggest it would make sense to have a lawyer vet the rules now, rather than as a taxpayer find myself paying for a lawyer when the town gets sued because we didn't vet them to begin with. So I realize that P&Z is an elected board, but I think that they definitely look to the Board of Selectmen for guidance. And I hope that you'll provide guidance on both these issues, especially since you have that $10,000 that came from the COG for affordable housing. So there is money, wouldn't have to come out of town treasury. So I hope you'll consider these two issues. I think they're very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, hearing no other participants. Again, communication, and I would also like to thank the people that have been busy decorating West Cornwall and Cornwall Bridge with holiday scenes and lights to make this otherwise dark time of year, more festive and fun. So again, thanks to the efforts that have gone in on those, and I'm sure the efforts will only build in a year where there's less restrictions on our public activities. Any other communications? Let's see, then addition to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda?
No.
Hearing none, we'll go into COVID-19 update. Again, we're seeing a few new cases, but the levels seem to be about the same. And Cornwall is in known as a red zone, as are many other towns in the state. Again, living in a remote area is not protection by itself from COVID. And again, thank all the people that have complied with our request for masks and other measures to restrict the spread of this virus. The school remains open, on track to complete their time. And again, a lot of that is due to the compliance of the students and the parents there and the staff do an excellent job. So that's good. Big shout out to Diane Beebe, who has been working tirelessly on the issue. The next chapter we're looking at now is getting vaccines to our first responders, medical first responders. We have had, a concern that because we rely on so few people, that if they got the virus, we would be in tough condition. But hopefully that is supposed to happen in January. Lists of responders have been submitted, and there's a lot of meetings going on, sort of behind the scenes by various groups. And again, a thank you to Rob Rubo, who's the Director of Public Health at the Torrent Area Health District. And he's been a great source of information on how we proceed as a town, as has John Field, who was a former fire chief from Torrington, now is the Emergency Management Director for Region 5, of which we're a member. And there's going to be a meeting about the vaccination program tomorrow at 9 o'clock for the emergency management people. We have our town COVID task force meeting at 10 o'clock. And then also tomorrow, the governor is going to give a statewide perspective at 5 o'clock. And I'll report any news on those meetings in my weekly update to people. So again, we're handling things pretty well with a lot of assistance from our partners, regional partners, state partners, and volunteers here in town. So again, we would like to see the numbers go down, but we're still in a tough situation, as everybody knows, with more indoor activities. So that's pretty much the COVID report of the week. The situations can change quickly. And again, thanks to all the businesses that are requiring, and now as a matter of course, people are good with their compliance when people get together. And the churches and people that are planning celebrations, this is still the holiday season, and there are plans to have celebrations remotely. And again, thanks to everybody for doing what they can to keep us safe. And if we have to do things remotely for the season, that's what we'll do. Any questions from the board on COVID, what's going on updates?
No, I'd just be curious to hear information as you get it in terms of the vaccination, like a plan for those who are the first tier, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, as far as I understand at this point, I'll know more tomorrow, that there's a 1A group. The first people that are getting it are hospital workers, of which there is over, I believe, over 100,000 in the state of Connecticut. So that's the first group. Second group is nursing homes, because they've been hit disproportionately hard. And the third group's going to be first medical responders. So those are people that are actually responding to calls, and especially in small areas, those, is a fragile number of people that we rely on. So that's the first group. Then I believe there are other emergency workers, firemen and essential workers that will be in group 1B. They hope to get the first 1A group done, the hospitals, nursing homes, medical first responders, done by the end of January. Then there's going to be a 1B group, and then they're going to get vulnerable populations. And of course, all these groups have more members in them as they go up. So we'll find out more, but that's, I think, how it's rolling out. And then they're getting, the general vulnerable populations. And I believe the youngest members of the community will be done probably last, but they hope to get most people done by January. And so we'll know a lot more in 2 weeks, how it's progressing. I believe the first vaccinations were given yesterday in the state. So again, thanks to all the people that have been working around the clock to pull this together in sort of record time. So we look forward to a successful rollout on that. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Next, we have our winter parking ban. And I'm going to try to roll this into the highway report, because that's going to be the news tomorrow and Thursday. That we do have a significant storm coming. We're under a warning now. And they're looking at about a foot, but more importantly, pretty significant winds up to 35 miles an hour, snowfall rates of an inch or two an hour, which is hard for our crew to keep up with overnight. So I would think by Thursday, everything's going to look pretty wintry and pretty well shut down. So again, this may be some forced social distancing for the short term, but we ask everybody's cooperation, and we will. We every year we have a winter parking ban, which bans people from parking on town roads or adjacent to town roads. There's a town right of way that extends past the paved sections, so it's not a great idea to park your car there, because snow plows can throw snow at a good rate of speed and a impressive amount of pounds per square inch, up to 20 feet off the road edge. So we ask everybody's cooperation there. On the good side, we did receive the new truck that we ordered last year. So that's in. Jim Vaneke is at the wheel of that. It's nice, shiny red truck. It has some advantages that hopefully we'll learn about. And so that's ready to go. We traded in one of our old trucks that was over 20 years old. So this should be a good improvement. I would anticipate that the transfer station will be closed on Thursday, because if we have cleanup activities, it's going to take us a while to get everything opened up so people can avoid any unnecessary travel, like going to the transfer station, which at this point, I'm pretty sure that's going to be closed. And just take the day off, enjoy the snow. And also ask people if they're plowing their driveways, not to plow it out into the roads, because that can be exciting when the plow trucks hit a snowbank that shouldn't be there. So overall, I think we're in good shape, ready to go. Sand and salt shed is full. And our crew is ready to go. Trucks are up. And you never know, because each storm is different, how it will play out. But I think we have a veteran crew. They know where the roads are. Even though sometimes when it's heavy snow, it's hard to tell where the roads are. So any questions about the highway? I would make a motion that we sign our winter's parking ban so John can circulate that tomorrow.
I second.
Right. Any discussion, Priscilla?
No,
How
I'll
are
run
things on
over in the
Chapel Street?
morning and sign it.
Okay, great. Good. Yeah. So anyway, we we sort of look forward to a little bit of snow. I don't think we need 18 inches to start or something, but hopefully it'll be moderate. And again, thank everybody for their cooperation. We do have a unified command system going, so we coordinate with the highway department and the emergency services. So if we do have an emergency call, the highway department will respond and plow driveways, roads, whatever we need to get to people. So again, we try to get the teamwork going and be able to have a unified response if anything happens. But the best thing is for everybody to stay home, get their snow tires on, get ready to go, and wait for the roads to be opened up. So, so then onto the ban. Any more discussion on the parking ban?
No.
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So then next thing is vacancies, and we're hearing from people that would like to serve and some people that are would like to retire from some of their posts. So on the reappointment group, we have Phil Hart for the Housatonic River Commission. That's a full term of 3 years. We have Steve Zaccardi, 2-year term on Park and Rec. And we have Michelle Ship, who has volunteered to be an alternate on Park and Rec. And we have received letters of correspondence from Bruce Bennett and Will Evans, both requesting to be alternates on planning and zoning. Bruce would be for a 1-year term and Will would be for a 5-year term, just because we stagger those so all the alternates don't come up at the same time. And again, we still have a vacancy for a full member, but it's the thought of the chair and myself, as we have 3 fairly new alternates, let them get a little more experience, and before we fill that vacancy that was caused by the resignation of Chair Joe Cutler. So again, we have Phil Hart, Housatonic River Commission, Steve Zaccardi, and Michelle Ship for Park and Rec, and Will Evans and Bruce Bennett, alternates on planning and zoning. And we're still getting some more expressions of interest in, so we'll deal with some more next meeting. So is there a second to appoint all those people?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, thank everybody for being willing to spend their evenings serving the town in various capacities. So next is our legislative update. We had a legislative meeting today with legislators for the COG area. And these are interesting times, not what anybody had hoped for 2020. It has caused the state to change its operations in significant ways. The legislature now, which had been a very open and accessible place, is now doing their business by remote. And so they'll go back into session in 2021, take up a biennial budget, 2 years. And of course, municipal aid to municipalities is one of the issues that they talk about and act on. So the stakes are fairly high. And again, taxes up, down, the same will be an issue. There was some talk of, changes that have happened, not just with COVID, but seeing the population changes in Western Litchfield County, especially, happen and have some, some positive impacts on the state, as far as potentially more taxpayers, more residents, more people here when things get lifted up. So that's making its way into the legislative arena in some ways. One thing that's up in the air, as you probably know, of the federal relief package will have a direct impact on the state of Connecticut, because we, as a state, I believe was said today, that we had one of the best financial reserves percentage-wise of any state going into this, at about 15% of the budget. But that is because the states had to do more, and it's had, just to expand their operations, they've had unforeseen costs. So again, the deficits for the coming year and the year we're in now have exceeded projections. So they will dip into that. But one of the big issues in Washington that is being hammered out before the holidays right now is, will the federal government assist the states and municipalities beyond what they've done already? And if they don't, then that will cause the state of Connecticut and other states to go into heavier deficits than we already are in. So, and if that happens, there's going to be more pressure on things like municipal aid. So again, what happens in Washington impacts what's happening in Hartford. What happens in Hartford impacts what happens in Cornwall. So again, still we're affected by what happens in our nation's capital, and we'll just have to stay tuned. Again, a bunch of other issues that don't directly impact Cornwall, but again, because we are in Connecticut, we will be involved with them, and we'll keep updated on them. And there are new legislators in Hartford, so everybody has their own ideas. I believe in a session like this, even though there's constraints because of COVID, there'll probably be hundreds of bills that will affect Connecticut residents who will be proposed. So it's a lot of exciting times in some ways, and we'll just stay focused and attentive to what's going on. I believe Maria Horn has been appointed chair of the Public Safety Commission, so that directly has to do with things like storm response, COVID response, fire and EMS, police reforms. There'll be a lot of issues that she will be tackling, and in a lot of ways, it's good to have, for us, to have somebody on the inside of all these issues. So that's my legislative update. There will be a virtual meeting of the Council of Small Towns where a lot of these things will go into more detail, and that will be in mid-January. So again, no big dinners, no door prizes, no big event, but there will be legislative leaders talking about issues affecting small towns. So I will tell you both when that is so we can watch it virtually. Okay, so anything else on legislative initiatives? So then there has been a lot of activity also in the area of housing. I did send the board a package of slides that were presented to the COG at its monthly meeting last week. It's an update on town housing issues. And the board is aware that effective July 2017, a bill was passed that makes it so by 2022, each municipality has to have a proactive planning process to lay out a strategy for meeting the housing needs of existing and future residents and workers of our municipality. So we did get a $10,000 grant, which is committed to covering the services of our liaison and planner with the process, Janelle Mellon, who's also been working on implementing our town plan of conservation development. And I just thought the package that we got sort of sets the stage and sort of quantifies the issues that are out there. And even though a lot has changed because of COVID, the underlying needs for housing hasn't changed. And in fact, the price of housing in Cornwall has probably gone up substantially in the last 6 months. So that right now there's 9 towns in the COG, approximately half of its members, including Barkhamsted, Canaan, which is Falls Village, Cornwall, Goshen, Harwinton, Morris, Norfolk, Washington, and Warren have applied for and gotten these grants. So they'll be undertaking this. So we're not the only town doing this. And there is a template and there are some consistent resources on how to go about it. Some of the data that came out in that partnership thing, which we'll try to get up on the website, I think is interesting. Of course, there's a big caveat that because we have seen an increase of people living here full time, a lot of these numbers need to be updated because they were last year's numbers. So again, have to take a lot of information with a grain of salt, knowing that things are changing quickly. But as of last year, the state was projecting that town's population would go down, town of Cornwall's population go down almost 30% in the next 20 years. Partially that's because of the age of our population. We have double the amount of households that the state average is for households with somebody 60 or over in the household. Being 60 or over myself, I'm doing my part, push that number up. But statewide, it's about 35%. Cornwall is 65%. We've also found that renters, majority of renters are what they call, they're burdened by the high cost of rents. Overall, rents in Cornwall are quite high and are rare. the amount of rental property as a percentage of the housing stock is low in the town of Cornwall. The other thing that we've seen is there's been a decline, a 90% decline in building permits for housing construction in Cornwall in the last 12 years, from about an average of about 10 per year down to 1 per year. So you've seen a decline in housing construction. And so we have a limit, a very limited housing supply. So again, I think I saw Janelle is on the call with us. And the other thing that's interesting too, that came out in the brochure, Cornwall's probably, most towns have some type of assisted housing. Cornwall has 2 units, one at Koogman Village and one at Bonnybrook, which is senior housing. At the time this was done, there were 18 people on the waiting list at Koogman Village and 10 people on the waiting list at Bonnybrook, and they only have 1 or 2 vacancies a year. And this is pretty consistent for assisted housing, that the demand is much greater than the supply. And I think in some towns, the one town I see here has 40 something people on their waiting list for assisted housing. So there's clearly a demand for rental housing, as well as a demand for workforce housing. So what we hope is that our plan will come up and encourage things like the action that was taken by Ginny Potter in North Cornwall to donate 2 lots to the Cornwall Housing Corporation, and also the action taken by the Planning and Zoning Commission to allow people to split off 2 lots as long as they're given to a nonprofit housing corporation without having to go through the formal subdivision process. There are still planning and zoning regulations that have to be met, and there's certainly torrent area health requirements that have to be met, and in the wetlands requirements that have to be met. But it was the attempt, and this idea was in the town plan, to make it somewhat easier for people that want to donate land to the housing corporation's parcel program, to enable them to do that. So then in the next month or so, I'm supposed to appoint a group that would work with Janelle on coming up with a plan, look at some ideas, and then there would be a public participation process that would go through, and then we would meet our statutory obligations on having a housing plan to increase our housing opportunities in town, and again, meet our responsibilities. So any thoughts on the board on all that? I know I ran through a lot of stuff, and I wanted just to put this out as an agenda item to let people know this is something we will be tackling in 2021. We would like to have, there are other things that are suggested in the town plan as far as housing, and we would like, again, we were planning to have some sort of housing townwide meeting in the spring of 2020, but that got postponed. So again, it's our goal to get a couple things going and integrate whatever this plan comes up with into the efforts of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So any questions from the board on all that?
No, I think it's great that we're moving along.
Yeah, I think it's important to not, what is a continuity of operations, that this is, at some point COVID will be less, and we have to make sure that our goals and ambitions for the town are met, and these things don't happen overnight. So any other Any other thoughts, Priscilla?
No, I
Yeah,
think it's
I
a
mean,
lot that has to be thought about, and budget. I mean, the cost of doing anything rears its legal head as well. All I can say is currently, if you wanted to move to Cornwall and you couldn't afford to spend more than $300,000 for a house, there's nothing for sale in Cornwall currently for under $350,000. And we're down to only 16 listings available for sale in Cornwall. Usually we have 25 to 30 properties available for sale. So it's a very tight market, and it's a great time for the town to be taking a step forward in an affordable direction.
yeah. And I think, again, look at a bunch of different aspects of this, and you look at the success. I recently talked to Matt Cooley, the Cornwall Housing Corporation, and again, they have, I think the right number is 14 houses that are occupied at the current time, a couple empty lots for their parcel program, which is different than rental housing. This is when people actually own the house. And the people that are in those places all provide essential services to the town, whether it's being a gardener, driving a school bus, being a firefighter. So again, and those people wouldn't be in town right now if it wasn't for these type of programs. So again, what we can do to look at more opportunities, I think is really important. So is Janelle out there?
Hi, Gordon. Yes, I am.
Oh, well, there she is. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think you ran over it pretty well. Just to add on, we do need to come up with a steering committee or a task team. And typically that's comprised of planning and zoning members, board of selectmen, local housing organization, corporation members, and the economic development commission as well.
Great. Yeah, I talked to Matt Cooley and she said she would be willing to be on it. So we'll try to get that in place January 2021. Do you know, Janelle, roughly how long this process takes and how many meetings would be involved?
So a tentative timeline does propose 9 months of planning, and then month 10 is set aside for adoption by the board. The Board of Selectmen is what's suggested. The statute is very vague on this, but the Board of Selectmen is suggested for area towns like Cornwall. So about 9 months we build into the plans, and the funding currently goes through June of 2021. I do know Department of Housing, they're coming out with their model regulations of how to go about the affordable housing plans. They're set to do that mid-December. So I do know they're flexible with the scheduling. We are targeting about a 9-month planning process.
And there's a lot of public input on that process.
Yes, absolutely.
Key component of it all.
Yeah. And all of the meetings with this steering committee, they're all public agendas with minutes, and members of the public are welcome.
Great. And are you participating in some of the other 9 towns that are doing this?
Yes, I'm tasked with 3 of the towns, and
Okay.
that could actually be 5. So,
Really? So what other, because a lot of these towns, I mean, we're all different, but our similarities a lot of times with issues like this are greater than our differences. What other towns are you working in?
So
currently?
I'm working in Harwinton and Falls Village. And
Okay.
To your point, it's very true. I've been digging deep in the data, preparing to get these steering committees together. And like you said, a lot of the data mirrors the other small towns with certain differences. And just moving town to town, just seeing the housing market and what's available out there and how much has changed due to the nature of the pandemic, on top of other factors in the region.
Right. And are other towns ahead of us on this, or are we about everybody's sort of kicking this off?
So no, the towns that I'm working on were on the same timeline. As far as January has really been a good time to start something new.
Yeah.
I know Falls Village just went through a pretty tough planning and zoning hearing on housing that I was assisting them with. So they needed to get their bearings to start, and Harwington has just sent me the names of their people. So January is a good time to get the plans going.
Great.
And we are hoping by that time, Department of Housing will come out with their, I say model regulations because I'm always working in regulations, but their template of how to go about these affordable housing plans. I know a lot of feedback when you do read through the statute that requires these plans. It's 830J. It's very vague. So I know a lot of municipalities have reached out to Department of Housing now that they've gotten funding to really have an understanding of what needs to be in the plan.
And we have some pretty good latitude as far as what we put in there, because I know one of our, as I said before, one of our most successful programs actually includes a home ownership program, which because of the state regulations, we allow people to the income levels are higher because there's a narrow window that you have to be able to afford a mortgage to have a house. So you can't be living necessarily at the lowest income level if you're going to actually pay for the house. So, but those income levels are higher than what the state calls for as affordable housing. And I think that's one of the things you hear a lot in the small towns is there are all these different variations on things that facilitate what we call workforce housing as opposed to affordable housing, because that's really one of our key goals is to have our workers be able to live in town. So do you think there's any opportunity for us to, I wouldn't say enlighten, but to at least broaden the perspective of the state as far as what's necessary, what works, because a lot of these programs have been going on for a while successfully?
Yeah, so just on that note, I have been speaking with the Department of Housing on what we would refer to as affordable housing or attainable housing, and some mechanisms in town, specifically Cornwall, and how there are more flexible mechanisms like accessory apartments that the state doesn't quite recognize as affordable housing, but the function of it in a community is very much in an affordable fashion. So the key goal of the plan is to increase the number of affordable developments in the municipality and to show strides towards that, and just being a diversified way of doing that. So I know the affordable housing definition is not always in line of what member towns are able to do. From my understanding of what the Department of Housing in the state is truly looking for is that we're making strides to have more diverse housing options, which is a big conversation in the legislative sessions currently, of just making sure that towns are increasing their housing options and making them in various ways. And I know, as you touched upon, just with the attainable housing cut being a newly adopted regulation, and thinking things through of what's really appropriate for our small rural towns, less so the big multifamily developments that are more suitable for a more dense urban environment.
Yeah, and like the beauty of some of these owner occupied places is that they don't cost really the town or the state money. So
exactly
again,
it.
And then, you know, so there's a lot of advantages to being creative and looking at different ways to do things.
Yeah, yeah. And not to mention just the home ownership aspect of it. So the way that we are approaching the plans is in 3 different channels or 3 different themes is how I've thought through some of the data, and that's truly mechanisms for rental housing, and then thinking through what you refer to as the workforce housing or a first-time home buyer, and then also really thinking about senior housing because it is much needed in the region.
Absolutely, because you get people on both sides of the age spectrum that whatever reason can't, that maybe they grew up here or lived here for a long time, and then either you get especially when you get older, you have to move somewhere because there's not the housing options that are there, or you grew up here, went to school here, but then can't live here, when you get out of school. So anyway, a lot to be done. And I think it's great to have you here guiding us on all this stuff. Maybe we can steal some other towns' good ideas and they can steal ours. Because I was thinking when we were talking to the COG, I mean, any town, every town has their own way of doing things, but other towns could do what the planning and zoning did, and all of a sudden then you have a bunch of workforce housing in all these towns. So no cost. Great.
Thank you for having me.
Great. All right. Great to have you on board. So anyway, we'll put that as a recurring positive agenda item going forward. Any other questions from the board on housing things? Yes. Okay. So our last thing is public comments. Any public comments from our visitors? Any hard questions from the press? I know you're out there.
No, oh, yes, I'm out here.
You're out there.
Did
Good.
you run past the highway report?
Well, the highway report was it's going to snow tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
That's the big report. And so just urging people to be storm smart. And the other report was luckily, well, not luckily, but skillfully, we have a new big highway truck to help us push the white stuff around. So again, I want to give credit to our crew who are going to be out there in fairly difficult conditions. I want to reassure people that even if they don't see a plow truck, they are out there making their way, especially when you get heavy snow. You don't go very fast pushing heavy snow. So, but we do have new equipment and a skilled crew ready to go. The main thing is don't park your car where it may get plowed in. So
The other thing I saw when Jonathan held up the parking ban paper, the copy editor in me saw a little typographical error in there. He's saying that it extends from December 15th of 2020 to March 15th of 2020 or March 30th of 2020. He wants to make that 2021 in March.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Jonathan.
Thanks for your free editing. Okay. Any other public comments?
Yes, I would like to speak to it, Gordon.
Sure.
I think that your discussion about the increased demand for affordable housing, in the proposed regs, it says that the cutoff lots can be turned over to a nonprofit or the town. So would you envision the committee that you're going to appoint in January would serve as if the property is given to the town rather than to the Cornwall Housing Corporation? Is that the group that would make those decisions?
At this point, I don't envision the town owning a lot of housing lots. The housing corporation is the town's housing agent and has been for a number of years because they're really set up to deal with that. So I think we will continue to cooperate with the Cornwall Housing Corporation. The town can receive property, but we're really not set up to deal with the issues involved with developing, building, managing housing. So I would think we would continue to keep on our partnership with the Housing Corporation. And I don't think this group that we're appointing is just going to bring us into compliance with the state statute to come up with a town housing plan, which we haven't specifically had. We have strong housing components in the last probably 3 town plans going back 20 years, but we haven't had something exactly like this.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question
Thank
for
you.
Janelle. I was really thrilled to hear you talk about, Janelle, the plan to address some of the legislative issues about how to count affordable housing units, because I know a lot of people have rentals but are hesitant to list them as affordable because that changes their ability to sell that property long term. So I think that's really important. There are more units than we can count. So I'm glad you're addressing that. But you also said there are going to be workshop meetings. And typically in P&Z, that's the code word for meetings that are open to the public, but you can't participate in. How do you intend to run your meetings? Are you going to allow for public input as opposed to P&Z?
Gordon, is it okay if I answer?
You can answer.
Okay, fantastic. I would be happy to take open comments, especially about housing. What I envision is that it would be an appendix, like supplemental to the current plan of conservation and development to really be robust about housing in towns. So I think the more informed that we can be as a community, the better. So I really think an open dialogue will be helpful. I do think it will be important to keep an open dialogue balanced with getting the work done. So definitely in a measured manner, it's certainly be open to open sessions. I think it's important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My last question, Gordon, addresses the issue of whether or not it makes sense to have a lawyer review the regs. I just think it would be so much cheaper now than to get into a problem with it later on. And why are they dragging their feet? I mean, doesn't it make sense for us to be in compliance from the beginning?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think Planning and Zoning will take it up at there. I think the issue that happened, the regulation they just passed is pretty straightforward and has fairly limited application. I think there probably will be more. I think the home business overhaul is a bigger lift, so that probably will get more review because there's probably bigger application for that. But again, I don't want to second guess Planning and Zoning because I think they're off to a good start. They're pretty. They've got some good people on there. So,
I think
but
you're
anyway.
right about the home business one being critical, and to look at no public input before the draft is revised just seems really cutting the citizenry out of the future of the town. And I would ask this board to really consider a formal request to P&Z that they allow public input since they're going to rewrite the regs.
And I think the board has been very receptive to all the letters they've gotten so far. You know, and not all the letters were consistent or said the same thing, but there's nothing preventing anybody at any time from writing the Planning and Zoning Commission. The question, I think what they want to do is have a workshop thing, and then there's going to be after the workshops, after they get their thinking, hearing what people have to say, seeing what the town plan says, then there's going to be a whole process which has to happen, which is a public hearing process. So there's an opportunity now to write them if you have specific concerns, as people have done, and then there's the opportunity during the public hearing process again and again. So I think there's safeguards there. So any other comments? Okay, anyway, wish everyone a happy holidays, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in a better year, 2021. And again, thanks everybody for doing things. And one thing I wanted to do, I know what I wanted to do, was I wanted to have Jonathan take a picture of all that. Right now, the old town hall, where we normally have events, is stuffed with presents that Heather Deneen and her elves are going to distribute to Cornwall children over the next week. And again, it's a very nice. So maybe what we'll do is we'll take a picture of it at some point and get it out of the website. But I think it's a very nice effort, meaningful effort, and of people looking after each other. A lot of people don't even know where their presents are going. But again, it's a very, these are pretty tough times, but it's a very heartwarming thing to see people's effort to make life better for people. So we'll get that picture out to the website before the sleigh comes and takes all the presents. So anyway, Jonathan, we'll put that on our to-do list to get a picture of all the presents in the town hall. So anything else in front of the town meeting or town meeting selectmen's meeting?
Excited to see
Okay.
the presents.
Okay. Picture of the presents. Okay. Maybe we should wait till they get wrapped.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I wanted the bicycle.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, we'll work on something. But again, thanks to Heather. She does 300% for people, and it's a wonderful town to be in when you see what people do for each other. So anyway, happy holidays, everyone, and be safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.